The moment the desperate egg shattered, a gigantic skeletal dragon burst out from a rift in the sky. It was the cursed white dragon Ates, and the instant it appeared, it unleashed a devastating blast straight at Shadow. Shadow froze in disbelief. A mythical grade boss? Here? He couldn't believe what he was seeing. But as the dragon's roar echoed across the land, realization struck him this wasn't an ordinary boss. It was a hidden one, the very creature from the old tale about the princess cursed by a white dragon. And that legend was true. Down below, the princess, now back in her human form, slowly opened her eyes. Shadow watched in silence as she floated upward, gliding straight toward the massive dragon's head. But instead of attacking, she gently wrapped her arms around its snout, tears streaming down her face. As she held the beast, her body began to glow and burn away, revealing a bright red heart beating inside her chest. Then, in a burst of blinding light, she vanished, her essence colliding with the dragon's face. The light spread across the sky, swallowing the creature whole. Moments later, the cursed dragon's bones began to collapse and scatter, leaving nothing behind except a single floating red heart. Shadow stood there, stunned. Then, a system prompt appeared before him. You have prevented the resurrection of the ancient god, Cthulhu. You have obtained the heart of the curse. The message also offered two choices. He could use the heart to become a servant of Cthulhu, feeding on his own lifespan, or destroy it to receive a mythical grade reward. Shadow hesitated. The heart's power was tempting, maybe it could grant him new, god-level abilities. But the description sounded sinister, like a parasite that could consume his soul. In the end, Shadow decided it wasn't worth the risk. He crushed the heart in his hands. The heart pulsed once, twice, then exploded into a storm of light, engulfing everything. When the glow finally faded, Shadow found himself somewhere else, still atop the leaning magic tower, yet different. He looked down and realized he was no longer himself. He was inside the body of a horned knight, wearing gleaming white armor. Before he could make sense of it, a young princess with long, greenish hair ran up to him, smiling brightly. "Ates, are you leaving again?" she asked. Across from them, another horned young man sat on the wall, watching silently. Ates, the white dragon in human form, gave a small, apologetic smile. "There's trouble at the harbor," he said. "The enemy has summoned a monster. As the kingdom's guardian, I need to help." The princess pouted, crossing her arms. "You're lying again. You promised to teach me how to ride the wind today. The harbor's 7 days away. You can't possibly come back tonight." She glared at him. "You're just like father, a liar. All men are." Caught off guard, Ates scratched his head awkwardly. "Where'd you learn to talk like that?" To calm her down, he pulled out a small silver scale. "This," he said, "is the scale of promise. Anyone who breaks a vow under its witness will lose their wings forever." Her anger vanished instantly. "I don't want you to lose your wings," she cried, flustered. Ates laughed softly. "Then trust me, I'll be back before dinner. Don't underestimate me." As he spoke, a pair of magnificent white wings unfolded behind him. The princess's eyes sparkled. "You're always so cool when you do that." Ates took off into the sky, leaving behind his 3 shadow guards to watch over her. The princess waved after him. "Come back safely." Then, determined to do her part, she turned to the guards. "If Ates is working hard, I can't just sit around. Let's prepare a feast for him." The memory continued, showing the princess happily spending her day with the shadow guards, gathering mushrooms, chasing a weird rabbit, fishing by a lake, laughing all the while under the same tower that loomed over their kingdom. By sunset, she had prepared a massive table full of food, even bizarre dishes like steamed rock and volcanic ash pizza, proudly announcing they were Ates's favorites. But as the night grew late, he still hadn't returned. Eventually, she fell asleep at the table, face resting beside the now cold meal. An old scholar, Lu Wen, entered quietly and woke her. "Your Highness, it's late. You should rest," he said gently. Startled, she looked around. "Wait, where's Eights? Why isn't he back yet?" Lu Wen's expression darkened. "The situation at the front lines is grim. They say the enemy sacrificed thousands to summon a creature from the sea, something enormous, covered in eyes and tentacles. Even General Eights might be struggling." The princess's face went pale. "No, that can't be. Eights is unbeatable." But her hope shattered when the scale of promise in her hand cracked apart. Her heart sank. It meant Eights had broken his vow. If he didn't return before midnight, he would lose his wings forever. Panicking, she grabbed Lu Wen's arm. "We have to find father. There must be a way to break the curse. If Eights loses his wings during battle, he'll die." Dragging the poor scholar behind her, she burst into a grand hall, only to find Eights standing there, unharmed. "Eights!" she cried, running into his arms. He smiled warmly. "I told you, didn't I? I always keep my promises." Relieved, she wept against his chest. The scholar, still catching his breath, asked if the reports were true. Eights nodded, smiling faintly. "It was a tough fight, but it's over. The army will handle what's left." Lu Wen sighed in admiration. "You truly are the kingdom's strongest guardian." Hungry, Eights turned to the table and grinned. "Did you make all this?" The princess nodded shyly. "Yes, though it's cold now." "It's still amazing," he said between mouthfuls. "Delicious as always." As he ate, she scolded him gently. "Slow down, or you'll choke." Later that night, atop the magic leaning tower, Eights stretched his arms and declared, "Now then, it's time to teach you how to ride the wind, just as I promised." But the princess yawned so wide her eyes watered. "Tired already?" he teased. She rubbed her eyes and admitted, "I've been cooking all day just for you. Can't we fly tomorrow instead?" Still, the excitement in her heart hadn't faded. Sitting on the floor, she hugged his leg like a child refusing to let go. "Please, Eights, just once. Turn into your dragon form and take me flying. I've been waiting so long." Eights hesitated, a conflicted look crossing his face. "You know the king forbade it," he said softly. "It's too dangerous for you." But the princess only tightened her hold, her eyes shimmering with hope. The princess's temper flared as she grabbed hold of Eights' armor, scolding him for returning home so late. She reminded him of the effort she had poured into preparing his meal, calling him an ungrateful rogue for keeping her waiting. With an exasperated sigh, she turned away, her frustration plain. Eights merely chuckled and admitted his fault, but gently asked her to keep his lateness a secret from the king, otherwise he'd never hear the end of it. Hearing that, the princess's anger melted in an instant, replaced by a soft smile. Then, without another word, Eights closed his eyes. A surge of blue light began to swirl around him, pulsing like waves of magic. In a burst of brilliance, his human form dissolved, revealing a breathtaking, snow-white dragon beneath the glow. The princess stood transfixed, her eyes wide with awe as she beheld Eights' true form. Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against the smooth scales of his snout. "Be careful out there," she whispered tenderly. Responding to her affection, a warm green aura enveloped her, lifting her gently into the air until she landed gracefully atop Eights' head. "Hold on tight," he rumbled, spreading his vast wings. With a mighty flap, they ascended into the starlit heavens, soaring above the sleeping kingdom. From the tall tower, Scholar Lu Wen and a shadow guard watched silently as their silhouettes vanished into the night. As the wind brushed her hair, the princess lay against Eights' back, gazing down at the glittering world below. "So this is the world you see from up here," she murmured, her eyes shining. "Do you think it's beautiful?" Eights asked softly. "It's unbelievably beautiful," she replied. her voice filled with wonder as they glided past a towering bell that echoed across the skies. Then, in a quiet moment, she turned to him. "Ates, will you always protect this land?" He hesitated for a brief moment, then answered with solemn conviction, "I will, always." Soon after, the princess drifted into peaceful sleep upon his back. "Thank you," she whispered faintly before closing her eyes. The memory faded, replaced by a tender scene of Ates gently tucking her into bed, placing a teddy bear beside her. He lingered for a moment at the doorway, giving one last look before silently stepping away. Time passed. Ates now stood before the king, his body battered and scorched. Concern etched across the king's face as he asked, "Were your injuries truly caused by that creature? Was it so powerful?" Ates, though clearly exhausted, smiled faintly. "It's nothing serious, Your Majesty. I just need some rest. The beast is gone burned to ashes by my flames." But the king's expression darkened. "I fear this is only the beginning," he said grimly. "The enemy empire is performing forbidden rituals. I can feel it. A great darkness is rising. And when it comes, not even the dragons will be spared." Under the brooding night sky, Ates straightened, his resolve unshaken. "Then I will stand ready, my king," he vowed. "Whatever comes, I will face it by your command." The scene shifted to the mage's tower beneath the same starlit sky, peaceful for a fleeting moment. Then the serenity shattered. Fragments of armor littered the floor, stained with blood. Ates was on his knees, his once proud form broken and battered, his breathing ragged. His chest throbbed with agony as he clutched a strange red crystal embedded deep within him, dark veins crawling outward from it like spreading poison. 5 years had passed. The world had changed, darkness ruled, and war had devoured the kingdom. The once glorious realm was now a battlefield drenched in blood and despair, its people crying out in terror as an inhuman army laid waste to everything in its path. Screams echoed through burning streets. Men, women, and children fled as twisted, skinless beasts with glowing red bodies tore through the city, crushing all who stood before them. From the balcony of his castle, the king stood silently, gazing at the chaos unfolding below. His expression was grim as he muttered that the Marega Empire had finally gone insane. Their enemies no longer sought victory, they sought annihilation. Their black banners rose over the battlefield like a curse, signaling that they intended to drag the entire world into ruin with them. Amid the devastation, the princess ran through the crumbling halls, panic etched across her face. She cried out Ates's name, screaming that the monsters had breached the city walls. When she found him sitting calmly atop a high wall, flanked by his 2 shadow guards, she could barely believe her eyes. Below them, the kingdom burned. "Why aren't you doing anything?" she pleaded, breathless and trembling. "The soldiers can't fight these creatures. You have to help them." Ates turned to her slowly, his eyes calm amidst the chaos. "I was just about to find you," he said. He told her to stay inside the magic tower. It was the safest place left. He promised she would be protected there and urged her not to leave. The princess agreed, but begged him to hurry, to destroy the enemy army before it was too late. To her surprise, Ates shook his head. "I will not go," he said quietly. "My duty is here to protect you." Confusion flashed across her face. "What are you saying?" she demanded. "You're the guardian of this kingdom. You were sworn to protect everyone, not just me." She pointed toward the burning city below, tears forming in her eyes. "The capital is falling. People are dying. You have to become a dragon and burn our enemies to ashes like you always have." But Ates said nothing. He lowered his gaze, his silence heavier than any words. Finally, he began to speak not about the battle, but about the dark truth behind their enemies. 5 years ago, he explained, the Marega Empire had uncovered a forbidden ritual forsaken by the gods. Through it, one could offer their own lifespan to summon otherworldly monsters. The greater the sacrifice, the stronger the creature that emerged. It was an ancient and horrifying magic, long abandoned by any sane people. But for the Marega, it had become their last and only hope. Eights unfurled an old map and pointed to their homeland, a cluster of islands surrounded by deep waters. There grew a miraculous plant known as the blood flower, a source of magic so potent it had extended the Maregan's lifespan to over 7 centuries. 1,000 years ago, as endless wars tore the continent apart, the Marega Empire sent out envoys like Eights to maintain peace. These envoys bound themselves to foreign kingdoms through magical contracts, using their strength to balance power between nations. Through them, peace was achieved, or so they believed. But humanity's greed ran deeper than peace. When the other nations learned of Marega's long lives and the blood flower's power, fear turned into hatred. The rulers of the world conspired in secret, united by one purpose: to wipe out the Marega entirely. Curses, plagues, and betrayal followed. Even the envoys, once protectors, were turned against their homeland. Their lands were burned, their magic stolen, and their sacred flowers harvested until the blood flower itself began to die. And when the last petal withered, the empire fell. Driven by despair, the Marega people turned to the forbidden ritual. They offered their lives, their souls, and their bodies. The ritual consumed them, branding every living Maregan with a curse. Their lifespans drained away, replaced by monstrous growths that tore free from their flesh. The creatures born from their agony had only one purpose: to destroy mankind. Eights' voice faltered. The princess watched as he slowly removed his hood. His once noble face was now scarred and twisted with bloody growths. His eyes shimmered with sorrow. "I can no longer become a dragon," he confessed. "From now on, when I change, I'll only become a monster." The princess staggered back in horror, whispering his name. "Why? Why is this happening to you?" Eights met her gaze with quiet resignation. "The truth few know," he said softly, "is that the Marega are not human at all. We are the dragon race." He explained that the guardians humanity revered as divine protectors were, in fact, dragons bound to serve mortal kings. The princess's eyes widened in disbelief. Standing tall upon the wall, Eights looked to the horizon where flames devoured the kingdom. "The end has come," he said. "Darkness has already swallowed this continent. Humanity's fate is sealed. All I can do now is protect you." Below, the slaughter continued. Red creatures flooded the streets, tearing apart soldiers and civilians alike. The sky itself seemed to scream as more monsters poured through the city gates. Inside the castle, the scholar Lewin reported grimly to the king that the monsters were multiplying without end. He begged the king to retreat to save himself. But the king refused. "There is nowhere left to run," he declared. "The magic tower is our last defense. If it falls, so will our mages. Without them, we have no hope." Drawing his sword, the king leapt into battle. His blade glowed with holy light as he cleaved a red creature in two. Pausing for breath, he thought of how far he and Eights had come, how they'd once fought side by side as brothers. But time had changed everything. While the king aged, Eights remained untouched by time. That unchanging youth had created a rift neither could cross. The king had come to realize that humans could never truly understand dragons, and dragons could never truly understand humans. As the battle raged, his mind wandered to one final memory: the day his daughter was born. He remembered Eights holding the newborn with care, his eyes gentle and filled with hope. That moment had felt like a promise of peace. But peace was a dream that could not last. A colossal shadow rose before him, a monstrous being with glowing purple eyes, gathering energy in its claws. The king faced it without fear, whispering a final prayer as the blast of energy consumed him. The explosion tore through the castle, erasing the last of the royal guard. From the distant tower, the princess saw the blast and screamed. Eights stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "The capital has fallen," he said quietly. "They'll be here soon." And then dark-winged beasts filled the sky. They crashed against the tower's shimmering barrier, screeching and clawing, unable to break through. Ates assured her the barrier would hold for now. Moments later, a bloodied Scholar Lewin appeared at the tower. The princess gasped, rushing to him. He bowed weakly, saying he'd come on the king's orders to escort her to safety. Ates nodded, agreeing to help him with wind magic to send them away. But before they could act, Lewin delivered the devastating news the king was dead. The princess froze, her heart breaking. He told her that her father's final wish was for her to escape to a neighboring kingdom. Tears filled her eyes. "Ates, you'll come with us, right?" Ates smiled faintly. "Where would I go? These monsters below, they are my people. I am their kind." He looked down at the raging horde. "I have no place left in this world. Wherever I go, humans will hunt me." He knelt, his gaze distant. "This will be my resting place, a knight's grave, a dragon's tomb." But before he could finish, the princess grabbed his arm. "Then I'll stay too," she declared. "I'll fight with you. This is my home, I won't run." Her eyes burned with determination. "I've perfected my wind-riding magic. Tell me how to form our contract." For the first time in years, Ates looked surprised. Then, slowly, he smiled. Taking her hand, he summoned a shimmering silver scale. "This will be our bond," he said softly. "Our promise like before." The princess smiled through her tears, beginning the ritual. "We'll always be together," she whispered. But Ates interrupted, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Our promise is to never meet again." Before she could react, he released a burst of wind that sent her flying away with the scholar. She screamed his name, reaching for him as the wind carried her into the night. Ates stood alone atop the tower. "Go," he whispered. "Your place is not in a dragon's grave." But then horror struck. Scholar Lewin's eyes glowed red. Before the princess could move, he plunged his hand into her chest, ripping out her heart. "You do have a place," he hissed. "A place for humans." Ates froze in shock as the princess fell lifeless. Lewin's body convulsed, sprouting red, monstrous growths. With a final gasp, he warned Ates, "You're not the only ones cursed." Then a massive tentacled creature burst from his corpse, devouring the princess's heart. The monster laughed, its voice echoing with malice. "How sweet," it mocked. "Her flesh, her life, it's exquisite. Tell me, dragon, was that revenge enough for the pain of your flames?"